probably heard the well-known story of David and Goliath, where Goliath was the mighty giant. Most people are familiar with how life began and the journey of David, a well-known figure in the Bible. However, fewer people know much about Goliath's background and true history. In this video, I will explore the origins of Goliath, the meaning of his name, the extinct race of giants he belonged to, his brothers, and more. If you are already subscribed to the channel, please hit the like button now so you don't forget. And if you haven't subscribed yet, watch the video, and if you find it interesting, leave a like and subscribe so you won't miss future videos. Now, let's uncover the mysteries of Goliath, the giant from the Bible. Goliath, a well-known character from the Old Testament, is described in the book of Samuel as an enormous giant. He was defeated in single combat by young David. This story, found in the book of Samuel, also shows how King Saul of Israel struggled both as a leader and in facing Goliath. According to the Bible, Saul and the Israelites went to battle against the Philistines in the valley of Elah. For 40 days, they clashed twice daily, once in the morning and once at night. Goliath, the Philistine champion, stepped forward from the Philistine army and challenged the Israelites to send a warrior to fight him in a one-on-one battle against the mighty giant. However, Saul was afraid to face Goliath, but David bravely accepted the challenge. Saul hesitated but eventually offered his armor to David. However, David refused to wear it, choosing instead to take only his staff, a sling, and 5 stones from the stream. When David and Goliath stood face to face, Goliath was fully armed with his armor and weapons, while David had only his staff and sling. The Philistine giant cursed David several times in the name of his gods, but David boldly responded, "Today, the Lord will give you into my hands, and I will leave the bodies of the Philistine army for the birds of the sky and the wild animals of the earth. Then, the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. Everyone will understand that God does not save with swords or spears, because the battle belongs to the Lord, and he will give you into our hands." Then David took a stone, placed it in his sling, and threw it at Goliath, striking him right in the middle of his forehead. Goliath immediately collapsed to the ground, and David ran forward, took Goliath's own sword, and cut off his head. After David's victory, the Philistine army panicked and ran away. The Israelites chased them all the way to the city of Gath and the gates of Ekron. David kept Goliath's armor in his tent and carried the giant's head to Jerusalem. Meanwhile, King Saul ordered Abner, his commander, to bring David before him. Saul then asked David about his family background, and David answered that he was the son of Jesse, a Bethlehemite. Interestingly, while many people know the story of David and Goliath, fewer know about Goliath's true background. Although he is often called the Philistine giant, Goliath was not actually a Philistine by birth. He belonged to a feared group known as the Rephaites, also called Rephaim, a race of giants that did not come from the biblical lineages after the flood. Goliath was a descendant of these ancient giants, just like the Anakites, Zamzumites, and Zuzites. These giants were not part of the biblical bloodlines that emerged after the Great Flood. Instead, they were known for their enormous height and incredible strength, which made them very different from ordinary people in Israel, Philistia, and Canaan. The name Goliath has several meanings, including soothsayer, exiled one, sorcerer, or even witch, suggesting that he was deeply involved in pagan worship and mystical practices. Because of his devotion to false gods, his name is linked to the idea of divination. Some rabbis even claim that Goliath's sword had mystical powers, adding an extra layer of mystery to his story. Besides Goliath, there were other giants of the same race who lived at the same time, including his 5 giant brothers. Some of their names were Lahmi and Ishbi-Benob, while another brother was also called Goliath. One of Goliath's brothers remains unnamed, but some believe he was the greatest and most powerful of them all. According to biblical records, this brother of Goliath had an enormous height and was described as having 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, a truly extraordinary feature. Regarding the origin of giants, I plan to create a series of videos in the future where I will explore the different races of giants mentioned in the Bible, including the ancient Nephilim. To give you a quick preview of the Nephilim, Goliath was a descendant of both the giants and the Nephilim. The Nephilim were the result of a literal union between fallen angels or demons and human women, which led to the birth of giants. Besides being giants, the Nephilim were also associated with various monstrous deformities that appeared on earth. This interpretation, stating that giants came from the union of fallen angels and humans, is the oldest explanation found in biblical manuscripts. However, there are also other interpretations, some of which I mentioned in a previous video about the pre-flood antediluvian period. We respect both versions, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave your opinion in the comments. One of the most fascinating facts about Goliath is his height. Over time, different estimates have been made about how tall he really was. In the Bible, it is written that Goliath was 6 cubits and a span tall. However, the length of a cubit was not always the same. It varied across different regions, such as the Middle East, Africa, Greece, and Rome. A cubit was measured as the distance from the elbow to the tip of the middle finger. However, since people from different ethnic groups had different arm lengths, the measurement of a cubit was not always consistent. For example, indigenous peoples are usually shorter and have smaller limbs, so their cubit measurement would be shorter. On the other hand, some African ethnic groups tend to have longer arms and taller bodies, which means their cubit measurement would be slightly larger. This variation in ancient measurements is important because many Bibles have errors when it comes to weights, measurements, and sizes. One example is the confusion between the Old Testament cubit and the New Testament cubit. The New Testament cubit, used during the Greco-Roman period, was about 47 to 48 centimeters. However, the Old Testament cubit, which was the Hebrew Israelite cubit, was longer, about 54 centimeters. So, if Goliath's height was 6 cubits and a span, his total height would be approximately 3.51 meters, or about 11.5 feet. This calculation is based on the Masoretic text, which is the most widely used version of the Bible today. According to this version, Goliath was 6 cubits tall, which would make him about 3.51 meters or 11 feet 6 inches in height. However, there is another ancient text, the Dead Sea Scrolls, which gives a different height for Goliath. According to this text, Goliath was only 4 cubits and a span tall, which would be about 2.43 meters or 8 feet. Different scholars have suggested other possible heights for Goliath, depending on how they measure a cubit. Among the most well-known height estimates, we have the one given by the Masoretic text, which is the version used in most Bibles today. Besides Goliath's height, the Bible also mentions that his armor weighed around 60 to 64 kilograms, 132 to 141 pounds. The Rephaites, the giant race to which Goliath belonged, were probably close to his height. However, there was another giant mentioned in the Bible. His name was not recorded, but he was described as having a terrifying size, possibly even bigger than all the others. I hope you enjoyed this video about the origin of Goliath and some interesting facts about him, the ancient giant defeated by the young shepherd David. It is also important to remember that apart from the Masoretic text and the Dead Sea Scrolls, other scholars have suggested different measurements for a cubit throughout history. These differences in measurement lead to different height estimates for Goliath. However, the measurements we discussed here are the most well-known and widely accepted. The story of Goliath still captures people's curiosity and interest today. His battle against David is one of the most famous stories in the Bible, representing the victory of the weak over the strong. The story of David and Goliath continues to inspire people as a lesson of courage, confidence, and faith. I hope this explanation about Goliath's height and other interesting details was both informative and engaging for you. The Bible is full of amazing stories and characters that encourage us to think about life and faith in different ways. See you in the next video.